Hello, Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year and cheers to advancing electric transportation in 2026. Thank you for joining us this afternoon and evening. My name is Tina Halfpenny. I'm the CEO of Efficiency Forward. And our most recent initiative is EVCAN, the Electric Vehicle Charging Accessibility Network. I am here to introduce you to our two speakers today for the Unlocking Smarter Charging webinar. We can get into webinar logistics real quick. So this webinar is going to be recorded. Everyone who's attending is on mute until we get to the Q&A section at the end. So we will open it up for questions. However, the Q&A or the question pane will always be open, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the presentation. So if you have questions, you enter them into the pane. If we can't answer it during the presentation, during the Q&A session at the end, we'll get to all the questions. I'll just give a quick overview of our agenda for today and then introduce you to Carolyn and Lannika. Both Carolyn and Lannika are going to introduce their respective organizations, EVCAN and OCA, the Open Charge Alliance. Then we'll talk a little bit about managed charging, the value and benefits, the technical capabilities to manage charging, the technical capabilities that matter, the QPL, and the QPL for market consistency, as a market catalyst, and then we'll get into the Q&A. So our speakers for EVCAN, Carolyn Weiner is the program director for EVCAN's program, leading our program strategy. Carolyn brings 20 years of experience across utility customer programs in renewable energy, strategic consulting. She's been in electric transportation for almost 15 years. She spent 9 years at PG&E, leading electric vehicle and energy efficiency programs, leading program implementation and customer engagement. And Carolyn has a BS and an MBA from UC Davis. And Lannika Dresen is the operational director of the Open Charge Alliance. The OCA is the leading global adoption of the OCPP protocol, the Open Charge Point Protocol. OCPP, as many of you may be familiar with, OCA promotes open standards for EV charging infrastructure. She's the director of standardization and the test lab at ELAD, with a long career in the utility industry spanning smart grids, smart metering, and EV charging. And Lannika holds a Master of Science in Electrical Engineering from Delft University of Technology. I am delighted to introduce you to both of these folks. And I will hand it off to Carolyn to get started.
Great, thanks Tina, and welcome everyone. So happy to see you all today, and again, happy 2026. So before we dive into how EVCAN and OCA aim to make an impact with EV adoption and EV charging growth, we want to give a quick background on our respective organizations. So EVCAN is an initiative of Efficiency Forward. It's a 501c3 organization with deep roots in energy efficiency and decarbonization. Our role is to support reliable, connected EV charging through stakeholder engagement and impartial tools key decision makers can trust. We publicly launched EVCAN in January 2025 with a vision to make EV charging accessible and easy wherever the journey goes. Our mission is to accelerate deployment of reliable, connected charging by reducing complexity and risk for utilities, local governments, and fleet operators alike. Next, you'll hear from Lannika.
Thank you, Carolyn. So the Open Charge Alliance, OCA, is the industry alliance that's governing OCPP. And we were founded in 2014 under Dutch law. So we are based in the Netherlands. And we are a non-profit foundation with the goal to help the EV charging industry accelerate. The Open Charge Alliance has the copyright on the specification itself. and has made it available under the Creative Commons public license. And the 3 activities that we do at OCA is we promote OCPP as a protocol, and the webinar of today is an example of such a promotion. We develop OCPP, so the future versions are developed by OCA, and we develop a testing and certification program. Next slide, please. So OCPP stands for Open Charge Point Protocol, and it's a protocol that sits, the information exchange that sits between the charging stations and the backend system, so the management system, and it describes the information exchange. So for example, how to authorize a charging session, how to start it, how to stop it. Secondly, how to manage the energy flow, so smart charging, bidirectional charging. And thirdly, how to monitor the status of the charging station and also the health of the charging station. OCPP has been around for quite some time, 15 years, and it has been developed by the industry in an agile way. So whenever the industry learned new things or learned about new functionality, the growing need of the industry was then translated in updated versions of OCPP. So OCPP also includes a lot of field experience, which is important, of course, for the usability of OCPP. Next slide, please. What's important to note, and what's very important to us as well, is that OCPP is an open source standard, and by that we mean that the specification itself can be downloaded by anyone free of charge, and you can use it unrestrictedly. There are no requirements for licensing, payments, registration whatsoever. If you're using OCPP, or if you're interested in OCPP, you can become a participant of the OCA. Then you can contribute to the specification itself and the setup of the certification program. You get discounts, but you don't have to be a member of OCA. You can just use OCPP freely. But of course, we hope that if you're interested, you want to join, but you don't have to. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lannika. So as you heard, OCPP gives us that common language that allows charging stations and management systems to work together at scale. Our near-term goal is using that interoperability to enable managed charging at scale. So EV growth can be a tool for reliability and cost effectiveness for all involved. As EV adoption grows, utilities are approving billions in charging investments. The key challenge isn't whether EV load is coming, it's how that load is managed to avoid unnecessary grid and cost impacts. For us to scale EV charging, managed charging needs to be part of the picture. Unmanaged charging increases peak demand and strains distribution assets, but managed charging adds flexibility by design, allowing EVs to act as controllable resources instead of fixed loads. Real-world deployments show managed charging can shift a large share of charging to off-peak hours and reduce peak demand, helping defer infrastructure upgrades while supporting EV adoption. A recent study comparing active managed charging to unmanaged charging showed that managed charging shifted about 60% of on-peak EV charging to off-peak hours, significantly reducing peak system stress. It also helped cut distribution peak demand by up to 30%. Which can help reduce costs for infrastructure while still meeting drivers' energy needs. This is just one of many data points that are out there today with a lot of great pilots that have been conducted around managed charging. So while pilots do demonstrate value, scaling managed charging requires consistency. Bespoke approaches increase complexity and costs. So we need to explore ways to look at shared expectations that enable repeatable, scalable programs. So making managed charging a standard practice requires more than program intent. It requires the right systems underneath it. Charge station management systems sit at the center of how charging is monitored, controlled, and coordinated, which is why a common CSMS specification is essential for scaling managed charging reliably across the US and Canadian provinces. Our core values we advocate and work to encourage as part of our efforts here at EVCAN. We seek to look for broad adoption with industry standards. We encourage testing to confirm performance against reliability expectations. And we enable or support verification of compliance to standards. So to support managed charging as a standard practice, EVCAN has published a charge station management systems technical specification, which focus specifically on these CSMS capabilities. The goal is to provide a shared language for what charging network systems need to do by defining both minimum and optional technical criteria. This helps customers and community stakeholders operationalize smart charge management in a consistent way while supporting real-world benefits for both. The specification isn't about prescribing designs or picking winners. It sets shared expectations to help decision makers avoid one-off integrations and reduce long-term risk. The specification focuses on the software and control layer that monitors and manages EVSEs, not the charging hardware itself. We specified standardized methods to communicate with critical infrastructure or systems that need to be orchestrated with smart charge management. This includes OCPP for electric vehicle supply equipment, IEEE 2030.5 or OpenADR for electric utilities and aggregators of DERs and demand response, OCPI for e-mobility service providers, and Modbus DMP3 or BACnet for commercial and industrial facility management systems for energy and for buildings. I also want to highlight the importance of a standardized approach for transmitting utilization, energy, and other site-specific information for our respective utility program teams. While not a formal industry standard exists just yet, I thought it prudent to show at least the use of APIs or some type of CSV file as a mechanism for sharing data for the program teams. This is a topic of interest to us that we'll want to continue to explore this year and look for shared frameworks or other ways to build common practices. The other criteria specific to monitoring, control, safety, and reliability are defined in the spec and leverage these standards where appropriate. OCPP is a foundational protocol for EVCAN's efforts, and we'll spend more time shortly in the presentation walking through OCPP, how it works, why versioning matters, and what it enables for managed charging at scale. One last thing to share is that charge management system capabilities can show up in diverse ways to support different customer types and technology applications. The specification supports multiple architectures, cloud-based software solutions, local controllers or load management, on-site load management hardware, EVSE integrated systems, and any sort of hybrid solution. This allowing decision makers flexibility in deployment models. The core tenets remain the same. We should be looking at standardizing on interoperability, energy management, monitoring, control, and data. That's what we aim to do. We will walk through the core focus areas described in the specification. But first, let's hear from Launica on what is OCPP and the importance and role of each version that's available today.
Thank you, Carolyn. So before we go into the details of OCPP, I'd like to show a picture of the world. And in this picture, you see all the countries where OCPP is being downloaded to. So we keep track of where OCPP is being downloaded to. And the darker the color, the more downloads to that region. And of course, it makes sense that here in North America, there are a lot of downloads because OCPP is required for funding programs. Of course, also the Netherlands, Germany is an active user of OCPP. India makes sense because there's a lot of IT development there, but also OCPP is used widely in India. And you see also a darker color for China. China does not use OCPP. They have their own Chinese standard. But of course, there is a lot of export from China to other regions. So that's why they have such a high interest in OCPP, mainly for export. We feel this is one of the goals of the Open Charge Alliance because OCPP also provides a blueprint for all the regions in the world that are maybe just newly starting with EV charging, and they can just stand on top of shoulders of regions where EV charging has already been in operation for quite some time. So they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They can just benefit from all the learnings and all the functionalities that other parts of the world have worked on and built into OCPP. And also, of course, it opens up markets. Having a standard in a certain region, if you're already providing equipment, it's very easy for you to export or to maybe offer your management system platform to those regions, because it's all based on the same standard. And we're very proud of this achievement at OCA. Next slide, please. So, of course, also in many places around the world, charging networks do not work with the standard. They have their own solution, a proprietary solution. And that's also, of course, works fine. But at the Open Charge Alliance, we do believe that a standard is important for scaling EV charging infrastructure. So first of all, it's very important. With a standard, you keep the freedom to migrate your charging stations from one backend system to another backend system. Should you want to, maybe because your backend system goes out of business, or you want to select a new system. With using a standard, you have freedom to migrate and not be dependent on the original network that you were using. Secondly, also, if you are a player and you want to enter the market and standards are used, it's much easier for you to get on board. And we think that this market is important. It's scaling, it's innovating. So new players should be really welcome into our industry, and a standard facilitates that. Well, thirdly, of course, a standard guarantees a certain set of functionalities. So if you ask for a standard, you can be assured that the security part has been handled quite well, smart charging, payment terminals. So it gives you a set of guaranteed functionalities across the board. And lastly, of course, when you use the standard, you also are guaranteed a certain set of data points that you may need for whatever purpose. So these are the reasons why we believe that a standard is the best way forward in our industry. Next slide, please. I mentioned it before, OCPP has been around for 15 years. It started in 2009. And we have released several versions over the past 15 years. So the most widely known version is OCPP 1.6. That version was published in 2015, so already 11 years ago. And what OCPP 1.6 describes is all the functionality that was required 11 years ago. So basic authentication, handling of transactions. It does cover smart charging and it does cover reservations, but that's it. An important part that was missing in the original 1.6 specification was security. Information security is extremely important in all aspects of technology, particularly also in EV charging. So that's why in 2018 we published a white paper explaining how to implement OCPP security onto 1.6. So it's important to make a note of that. Of course, the industry keeps developing, and we published an updated version of OCPP 2.01 in 2020. It's important to note that it's breaking with 1.6. So if you have a 1.6 system, it does not work with the 2.01 system. But we really felt the need to make sure that we were ready for the future, that we needed to make these breaking changes. OCPP 2.01 has native support for security. It has the same functionality as 1.6, but it also extends with ISO 15118-2 charging, better device management, and additional improvements. The fact that OCPP 2.01 is breaking with 1.6 is very cumbersome for the industry, so that's why we decided that as of 2.01 we will no longer break the specification. And that's why the version we released last year, OCPP 2.1, is backwards compatible with 2.01. So the transition from 2.01 to the updated version is much more easy and doesn't require that much effort. So the additions to 2.1 are quite important. What we've added is support for bidirectional charging, DER controls. We'll get back to that a little bit later. but also better support for payment terminals, dynamic QR codes, ISO-20. So all the requirements that are needed in this day and age, so in 2025, are now included in 2.1. And of course, it depends on how you are using your charging infrastructure, whether or not 1.6 still serves your purpose, or whether you are starting to move into features that are not covered in 1.6. And if that's the case, then the 2.x series is the OCPP version that will fit you best. Next slide, please. I mentioned that OCPP 1.6 is already 11 years old, so that means also it's in maintenance mode and it will no longer evolve. So of course we'll continue to do errata management. There is a testing tool that you can use to test for OCPP 1.6. We have a certification program. We publish white papers how to use certain functionality with 1.6. But that's it. All the new feature development is done on the 2.x version. And on top of that, the 2.x version is 2.x series is also the version that is offered to IEC for IEC ratification. So the 2.01 and the 2.1 versions of OCPP are also published as IEC standard. It may not be that relevant for the United States or the North American market, but in certain markets, IEC publication is a requirement, for instance, in Europe, for legislators. So I mentioned before, you can, of course, choose if you want to work with 1.6 or 2.x, but honestly, our industry is not in maintenance mode, so I don't think that a protocol that is in maintenance mode will serve you for the future. So at some point in time, you really may need to consider upgrading to the current version of OCPP. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit more detail. So here you see sort of grouped in functions the scope of OCPP 1.6. The darker yellow color means that it's mandatory. So you have to implement these features if you want to call your system OCPP 1.6 compliant. So and in this slide you will see, oh sorry, so that's okay. And the whiter blocks are the optional parts. So a minimal implementation of OCPP 1.6 only requires the basic security, the authorization and the notification to the backend. And optionally you can implement reservations, smart charging, and client-side certificates for TLS. So you can choose how far you want to implement 1.6. The next slide you'll see with the darker color, the 2.01 series and the 2.1 series. 2.01 covers the exact same thing, but it adds as a mandatory feature the migrating of your charging station to another backend system. Yes, go ahead, Carolyn. It adds more functional blocks that are optional. If you click again, please, Carolyn. So the ISO-2 smart charging support, the information on the display there, those are all optional features. So you can still implement OCPP 2.01 in a very limited way. And 2.1 only extends the functionality. So 2.1 has the exact same features as OCPP 2.01. Again, the only mandatory part are the bottom darker colored parts. The rest is all optional, so you can pick and choose whether you want to add support for payment terminals, for battery swapping. So you can pick and choose your OCPP 2.x implementation along the requirements that you have for your projects. Next slide, please. So already taking a bit the next slide will explain this a bit more, but if you look at a utility company, of course, a lot of things are important to a utility company when it comes to running charging networks, but managed charging by far is one of the most important things for a utility. You would want to control your charging speed and the impact it has on your grid. All the OCPP versions, 1.6, 2.01, and 2.1 all support managed charging. So if you look at that functionality, all the OCPP versions will serve your purpose. If you look at bidirectional charging, only 2.1 covers bidirectional charging and the DER control features. If you want to switch from one CSMS network to another CSMS network, it is natively supported by 2.01 and 2.1. For 1.6, we have published a white paper how you can do this, but it's not an integral part of the specification. Security, same. The security specification in OCPP is identical across all the OCPP versions. It's natively embedded in the spec itself for the 2.x series. For 1.6, it's also published as a white paper. And the status and health monitoring is not part of OCPP 1.6. It has very, very limited standardized features for monitoring that's included with the device model in the 2.x series. And this is, of course, a logical evolving of a protocol across like a decade. Next slide, please. So too quickly, I won't go into detail this much, but of course, managed charging is all about spreading the load. To the left, you see the duck curve. The black line is the duck curve, at least in the Netherlands. And of course, what we know is that people charge when they come home in the evening at exactly the same time when we have a peak in demand already. So of course, if we were not to do managed charging in the Netherlands, we would have to reinforce our grid massively, and it will also be very costly and inefficient because it's only sized for this one peak, which is not necessary. And also, of course, we have congestion on our grid. To the right, you see a picture of the Netherlands. This is a map of the Netherlands, and this is the current situation for industrial customers. So you can see that virtually nowhere in the Netherlands at this point in time, when you're an industrial customer, you can get a grid connection because the grid is full. So in the Netherlands, we really have an issue with grid capacity as we speak. And managed charging is not the only way, of course, but a very important tool that we are deploying to make sure that we can get as much EV charging infrastructure out there and still keep the grid up and running, of course. Next slide, please. So regarding the migrating of the charging stations, we have recently published a white paper which describes in detail what you can do if you want to migrate your chargers from one backend to the other backend. And this white paper not only describes the OCPP part, of course, which is one important aspect, but it also describes all the other aspects that you would need to consider. For instance, your SIM cards if you're using them, your QR code or your NFC stickers if you're using them, if you have other contracts with payment service providers, of course, signage. So this may be a useful guide if you ever encounter the wish to migrate your chargers. Maybe this white paper will help you how to go about that. Next slide, please. So regarding bidirectional charging and more importantly for utilities, DER control. This is a picture of how you can, if you want to use OCPP to do that. Of course, there are many different ways that you as a utility can control your DERs. If you want to use the charging network operator as sort of an aggregator and you want to send 2030.5 messages or OpenADR messages or whatever, controlling messages to your charging network operator, and they will forward those messages and information to your charging station and the vehicle in the end. You can use OCPP for this, and this is what I mentioned previously that has been published with the 2.1. There's a big portion describing how you can utilize OCPP to adhere to the DER requirements from utilities across the world, but also particularly in North America. Next slide, please. And security. Security almost needs no further introduction. What I'd like to share is that we have published, or we will publish shortly, the OCPP Security Operations Guide, which is a description, 59 pages of security requirements for EV charging infrastructure. So it does not only describe the OCPP part of security measures, but also beyond OCPP. There are a lot of aspects that you need to consider in securing not only your charging station, but also your charging station management system. And it has a long list of all things that infrastructure providers should check and make sure that it's covered. It also, at the end of the security guide, provides an overview of security research that we've done, and that shows that many charging stations and backend systems that we look into in the field do have vulnerabilities that are not hard to fix, but they need to be fixed. So this is an important document, and we hope you find it useful in double checking if the charging infrastructure that you are operating is indeed cyber secure. Next slide, please. And the other thing I'd like to highlight is that we will be participating in a hacking competition, the Point to Own Automotive competition, which is, as according to this organization, the largest zero-day vulnerability discovery contest. So if you're familiar with these organizations, you may know, but what it is, it's a competition where they invite a lot of researchers or hackers to try and hack systems. And whenever they succeed and they find a vulnerability, they get a prize, money. And this edition is targeting the Tesla car, but also a lot of charging stations, DC chargers, AC chargers. And the Open Charge Alliance is joining this event as well. First of all, of course, to promote the OCPP Security Operations Guide, but also secondly, to walk the talk. So we are also participating. We have a testing tool, and we have offered our testing tool to the researchers for them to hack. So we're very excited about that, and anxious to learn if during this event they will find vulnerabilities in our tool. And of course, we'll fix them when they find it. We'll fix them quickly. This is only to show to you how important information security is to our industry, to the EV charging industry, to OCA, and also to utilities. Next slide, please. Yes, that was my next slide. Over to you, Carolyn.
Yes, thank you, Lonneke. So certified industry standards are essential to interoperability, and EVCAN has 3 requirements here. First, the CSMS needs to interoperate with EVSEs as demonstrated by an OCPP certificate for either 1.6 or 2.01. As you all just heard from Lonneke, to allow for greater flexibility for switching charging networks and scaling charge management capabilities, OCPP 2.01 gets closer to the goal than 1.6. We've heard that neither version completely avoids the need for customization when installing a CSMS on a new model of EVSE. So we added a requirement that a CSMS must support EVSEs from at least 3 different manufacturers in order to qualify. Multi-vendor interoperability is very important for long-term infrastructure reliability because product lines and even companies may come and go. And then the third requirement for interoperability is that a CSMS needs to support at least one of these 3 pathways to communicate with distributed energy resources or demand response management systems. We've provided flexible options here as utilities have different levels of standardization when it comes to DER orchestration, but we definitely look forward to how this evolves over time and being part of that conversation. EVCAN recognizes the cybersecurity standards listed here as they apply to process, cloud services, and payment. Within each of these 3 columns, only one certificate is needed. Clearly, if you aren't specifically offering any sort of payment authentication for that specific product model, we don't expect that you need to have the PCI DSS certification. Our third focus area is on EVSE monitoring control. So for operators, utility staff, and implementers, they need to have visibility into station status, availability, and performance. Monitoring control are prerequisites for managed charging and grid services. We specify the parameters that need to be visible in the charge station management system for adequate monitoring. We have other criteria specific to control that can be reported by the provider, but additional work on common practices are needed before we can make it a requirement for listing. We have included 9 specific criteria that make up energy management capabilities for CSMSs. Of those 9, we've started with 2 minimum requirements listed here. The remaining may not be explicitly needed in every scenario and therefore may be called on for highly targeted programs. For example, max power limit control, volt var functions, and volt watt functions, to name a few. Of course, I encourage you to take a look at the specification more depth. You'll be able to review the other 7 criteria that we have in there. The fifth focus area is data analytics and reporting. So in this one, we really see data analytics and reporting ensuring that a CSMS can collect, analyze, and report data securely through an API or through CSV files. Data analytics and reporting are so important to utilities and regulators in helping to define priorities and consistent practices for data definition and measurement. So this year, we are looking to expand on resources that help utilities and other stakeholders with consistent frameworks for reporting. I don't list it out here, but as you can see, encourage you to look at the specification to be able to review the 42 plus data parameters we specified by certain categories. And we work with the vendors to evaluate which of those parameters they have active in their reporting frameworks and make that information available through the qualified product list that we'll see in just a minute. There is more in the specification that we did not go through in depth. I encourage you to take a look on our website. You'll see we look to check that the provider solution is available in the US and or Canada. Also, I've mentioned a couple times that we have other criteria covered where standards are still in development, or may be a capability that may not be appropriate for all systems based on their target market or use case. So we've spent time walking through what the CSMS specification defines, provides clear shared expectations, and including a deep dive into OCPP. So next step here is turning those expectations into something practical, which is exactly the role of the qualified product list, showing which solutions meet the bars set by the specification today. We're going to talk about that next. So the QPL is a trusted list of charge station management systems evaluated against the CSMS specification. It reduces risk by giving utilities, local governments, and commercial operators a common starting point without having to independently validate every vendor claim. The QPL is designed to be easy to navigate, helping users focus on outcomes rather than technical vetting. For example, users can filter by capabilities or product type information, as you can see here. We have clear presentation, easy to use layout to make it easier to compare options and support internal decision making. We also have a quick search at the top. So as our list continues to build out, we'll make it easier for you to check on a specific product that you're interested in or a particular vendor that you want to see if they got listed yet. As you can see, we have 3 products already listed that we've worked with so far in the past year. So you feel free to check those 3 out and see where we've been able to get them qualified against the specification. And then one other main feature I want to highlight is the ability to download information. So you're able to actually select, so as the list grows and we have more vendors on the list, you'll be able to select specific items and then actually download and see more of an Excel tabular format of their qualification characteristics against the specification. And when you click on a specific product, as you saw on the prior screen, we also provide detail on all capabilities that were evaluated during the qualification process and how it easily aligns to the specification. So you see on the left-hand side, each focus area that I walked through earlier is clearly identified. So it's easy for you to compare to what we had in our specification and where that vendor product has been thoroughly qualified and checked against. As we prepare for extending the use of this tool for a more comprehensive look at EV charging systems, we have started with a view of OCPP certified EVSE chargers at this stage. This provides a quick, easy to use screening of hardware that has been certified by OCA. This is a section we actively work with OCA to maintain. So based on feedback or responses from our stakeholders, we'll assess our role in providing qualification on hardware in the future, in particular other areas or other capabilities that would make sense to do some more thorough qualification in. In closing, adopting the CSMS specification and QPL helps market actors reduce risk while encouraging market interoperability. Ultimately, we are trying to build consistency in the market. This lays the foundation for managed charging to be a common practice among EV drivers, fleet operators, and local communities. We have our core tenets for successful scale. We are encouraging broad market interoperability. We look to embed energy management in a diverse type of set of products, charge station operations. We want to advocate for consistent data reporting practices and continue to support for transparent uptime and reliability. We didn't get too much into discussion on how we approach qualifying for uptime and reliability in depth. That's definitely something we want to continue to explore, and probably a separate webinar in itself to share more information. So we're look forward to speaking with those on the phone that want to get further. Managed charging is part of the evolution for electric transportation. That is and V2X applications. V2G and V2X rely on the same core capabilities managed charging, and trusted communication. Building managed charging today will prepare utilities and key decision makers for future grid services without locking them into premature solutions. We encourage utilities, local government customers to explore the QPL, consider aligning programs with the specification, and we look forward to your participation in future EVCAN forums that we'll be working on lining up this year. So we want to thank you for your time today and really appreciate you shaping EV charging. And we want to open up the floor for let me.
Thanks, Carolyn. So first question is for you, Carolyn, and I wonder, your mic was getting a little flaky towards the end, but I hope it'll still work.
Can you hear me okay?
So, yes, heard that great, thanks. Okay. Could you talk a little about how EVCAN verifies compliance with the specification?
Yes, great question. So we have a team here at EVCAN that has been working over the last year as we built out the specification, and especially with a lot of the learnings from the first 3 providers we been with, to really understand how best to collaborate with them and where they have certifications, as well as some of the other complementary. So that may include not just checking different types of documentation, lots of documentation we ask for to review from each vendor, but also hosting a walkthrough. Data and reporting and visualization, we intend to some more collaborative reviews with the vendors to see what they have in place and around.
Thanks. And here's one for Lannika. Could you talk about how the OCPP 2.x standardizes the reports for data related to charging station reliability?
Yes, thank you. So in the 2.x series, we have a functionality called the device model, and that is a way where you can model your charging station and sort of provide to the backend which components are inside your charging station, and also sending messages about those components. So you can share the status of components, faults. You can put monitors on all the components. So it has a very extensive way to provide information from the charging station to the backend, telling you what's happening and what's about to go wrong or what's gone wrong. What OCPP doesn't cover are standardized error codes. So having a fixed set of codes, and this code meets always this error for all the different vendors. And there is a need in the industry to have that. And that's where the ChargeX consortium over the past few years did great work, and they published a method of standardized error codes for the North American market that the OCPP protocol can provide to the backend system. There is, of course, a lot of information regarding that at the ChargeX consortium. Also on the OCA website, we have a white paper called Improving Uptime with OCPP, and it also describes what OCPP can do, 1.6, 2.01, and updated versions to provide information about reliability and uptime, and also refers to the ChargeX error codes that are used in North America.
Thanks. Let's see. We have a question for Carolyn first. How many qualified products might we expect on the QPL by the end of 2026?
Very good question. We are aiming to shoot for about 25 is what our target is, but we are so that's kind of our focus area, and that's based on discussions with some of our utility stakeholders that we've been partnering with over the last year, understanding what sort of the breadth of charging networks that they've qualified historically or integrated with, and then also looking at some broader market data on how many different types of charge management system providers might exist out there.
Thanks. And for Lannika, could you speak to if the paper on moving between networks resolves some of the challenges faced after NLX left the North American market?
Sure. Well, what if you read the paper, there are two aspects that are really important. So first of all, I think I'm not sure if the NLX chargers actually had OCPP. I'm not aware. Of course, so the first important part is the charger that's sort of stranded needs to implement OCPP, and also it needs to be checked either with a test report or with a certificate. But even if that's the case, or even if a charger would speak perfectly OCPP, you still need the old CSMS provider to help you with the migration. They have to provide you with the password, with the SIM information. So it is very hard to migrate your charger from one backend to the other backend without the old backend provider helping with the migration. I'm not familiar with the whole NLX procedure, so I'm not sure if that was the case, but it's really important. So in addition to requiring OCPP certification, because then you know that it has been checked, that it has been implemented properly. It's also good if you select a CSMS provider that you put in the contract that in case of parting of ways, for whatever reason, that they are available to help you migrate the chargers from their backend to the new CSMS of your choice.
Thanks. And another question for you. For utilities that are setting up EV charging programs, could you recap what benefits they would gain by requiring CSMS support for OCPP 2.x?
Well, of course, if you require a standard which is OCPP, then of course I think I presented it in the presentation. So if you require a backend system that is certified for OCPP, you are guaranteed that if you in future want to change backend, you can migrate the chargers that use OCPP to another backend. you are ensured that it covers smart charging, it covers the health status monitoring, it covers network migration, it covers, if you go for the 2.1 version, it covers the bidirectional for the future. So it ensures that the investment that you make in your network and in your hardware will fit everything that you need as a utility and will enable you to upgrade. If in a couple of years down the road you want to add new features, you can upgrade on the 2.x version. I think it's really important if you're investing in 2026 that you invest in a system based on a protocol version that is recent. I don't think it is wise if you invest in 2026 to invest in technology from 2015, which is OSPP 1.6.
Thanks. And those are all the questions we have at the moment, unless anyone has any more last minute questions.
I think there was a hand up. I don't know if you can
Oh,
see
great.
if the audience can talk. Did you see the hand up? Sorry, I have to see the person's name.
Lauren, can you help with that?
Charan? Sorry if I said it wrong. Lauren, if you can help, I don't know if
Oh,
they.
no, yeah, they're all muted. Everyone is
Okay.
muted at the moment.
If you can put your question in the chat, we might be able to answer that way, or we can follow up with you offline. Let's see, there's another. Oh, there it is.
I'm Carolyn, if you're seeing something, please proceed. I'm not seeing it.
No, it looks like we you marked it as answered. So I think it's a question. Yeah, so she Monica, I think you'd already, unless there's another question that this person had. So Charan from Sunstream Global. If there's another question you had, I think Monica spoke to how to handle network latency or offline scenarios. Did that in
Yeah, okay.
OCPP
So,
2.0?
yeah, I see a question. Question, Veronica, what are the best practices for handling network latency or offline scenarios in OSPP 2.x? I'm not sure if I fully understand the question. So offline scenarios for OSPP have always been possible, or regardless of the OSPP version. And network latency. So I'm afraid I don't fully understand the question. If the Sharon can maybe elaborate a little bit more in the chat, then I can maybe answer better, if that's okay. And I see a second question for you, Carolyn, from Achim.
Yes, give me just a minute. Okay, really great question. So this individual is speaking to standards are continually evolving. Sometimes there can be sort of different alternative types of behaviors of how standards are getting implemented. So how are we sort of tracking on where there's risk as standards are changing and the market's trying to continue to grow? What is our role in that on the EVCAN side? And you asked specifically, are we a member of OCA? Very good question. So we are more in a partnership mode with OCA, but as we on the EVCAN side continue to expand our role and capabilities, one thing that we've done really well in historically in other areas that we are continuing to build out is build our relationship with key standards organizations, standards bodies to have an understanding of where those standards are going. So this particular webinar is a great example where we are working with OCA to really understand how the versions are evolving over time, So then we can bring that back to our stakeholder audiences and talk about how we should be thinking about responding to those changes. Are there certain types of criteria we should try out within our specification in a more optional manner to kind of understand where product is at and being able to meet some of those specific criteria, with the aim that in the long run we are trying to help the market move towards adopting those standards, and even kind of preparing for future standards changes. So it's an ongoing process, and I again encourage, we hope to use the forums we are building out this year to get more feedback, especially from industry, on how things are tracking towards standardization, and then feed that back into other standards bodies like OCA and provide feedback that way. I hope that helps. Any
And then
other?
Carolyn, are you seeing the next question?
I am.
Great.
I'm looking at Eric's question. So
Yeah.
I assume that's what you say. Okay.
That's the next
So
one.
hello,
for you.
Eric. Happy New Year. Happy to see you on the call.
Can you hear me? Because I'm happy to see you as well.
Okay. You're on. I can hear you now.
Yes.
I was just reading your question.
So the
I'm glad I
question
could
is,
talk, because I'm not sure my question is.
if we are a utility intending to serve as both a CPO, a charge point operator, and as an e-mobility service provider, and we're in the midst of developing a CSMS with a vendor partner, how might you suggest we confirm whether or not that vendor is developing their CSMS solution to adhere to CSMS best practices?
That's a great question. So first off, I would encourage, taking a look at, selfishly our CSMS specification. I feel like we did a really good job of covering where standards are today, which ones are the most sort of robust and grounded to really lean on, and that you really want, at a minimum, you should be making sure that they can meet those requirements. I think that's probably the first start, and we're happy to, and we're always looking for like real world examples of how if you're challenged with, you have these standards, but you're really not getting a clear picture on how they're getting implemented locally at a specific, in a specific product, bring that to us. Let's talk about what you're learning from that experience, so we can build in maybe more specificity in what we have in our documentation to help in navigating some of those questions you have.
Yeah, and I think that's where we find ourselves right now is like, we embarked on this journey with this vendor about 1.5 years ago, and now we have that. This didn't exist then, we have it now. Yeah. And now, of course, we wish we had been able to vet this vendor to this, according to this standard. And now I'm in this kind of awkward position of, how do we kind of retroactively go back and do a sanity check to say, hey, is the solution they're developing for us, aligned with these best practices, right? Do we do kind of like an audit? Do we hire a separate contractor to provide advisement? But essentially, with the vendors we're working with, they've been asking us questions that we would have hoped they would have been answering for us, and that makes me leery, right?
Well, so one easy requirement that you could add is just tell them that they need to be on our EVCAN list. And then if you require that they meet the EVCAN specification, then all the little detailed questions they will work out with us in order to confirm that they met the specification.
Got it.
Yeah, that actually takes that job out of your hands, Eric, of having to like screen against our criteria. If they're open to it, we'd love to work with them, and we can do the qualification as part of our process. And within that can give you kind of a, obviously you saw like there's more self-service, but we can also work with you to share what we've learned in that screening process for you.
Yeah, that's great. yes, I definitely will ask this of them. I don't know that at this stage we can add it as a requirement without there being
Yeah.
ramifications, but at the same time, yeah, I think this is one of those things we can strongly urge them to do.
Thank you. Great question. All right. And I know we're at time. All right. Well, I don't want to keep folks any longer. The last thing I was just going to flash up, and we will be sharing the deck, I believe, or at least the recording, but wanted to just flash up within the deck. There will be links to some of the main pages that we recommend you all take a look based on the material we shared today. And again, really appreciate you all staying on and participating, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you all in the future. Have a good rest of your day.